welcoming the last folks into the room. Want to welcome everyone to our session. If it's possible, we would love for you to be on camera, almost as if we were in a room together. I know that's really hard sometimes, and especially with what you might be having going on in your space, but would love to see your face real time so that we can be as personal as we can be. We have about 70 or so people in this room. So thank you for those of you who are putting on your cameras now. We really appreciate it.
Ellen,
yes.
Ellen, if I can interrupt, the case example is now in chat and can be opened by any individual.
Great. So that's a great way to start, Gail. I want to ask everyone as you're coming on, we have a breakout during our hour and a half together that will require you to have the attachment that is in your chat. So if everyone could go to the chat and you'll see a document that Gail just put up, our fabulous host from the Federation in support of all of our learning. If you'll pull down that document, you can certainly minimize it and then just have it for when we go into the breakout, or print it if you have a printer accessible to you. So is everyone able to do that? And if you're not, please put into chat your questions about the logistics of that. We're happy to help you. Does everyone see the attachment in the chat? Great. All right. So some people don't see it. So here's what you have to do. For those of you who can't see it, go to the very, very, very beginning of the chat at the very, very top. Gail,
I just put it in again.
You just put it in again. Great. It'll say case example, a case example. So for those of you who said you couldn't see it, can you see it now? Melissa, Mary Beth, want to make sure everybody has it. Victoria, Nelson, Paul, right? Some of you have said you couldn't see it. Got it. Paul, thank you so much. And someone said they couldn't open it. Let's just make sure that the person
not open.
Crystal,
Oh, no.
Let's see if you can open it. And if not, we'll work with you.
Does anyone have it? Can people open it? Thumbs up if anyone has it open. Oh, I see it printed. I see thumbs. Okay.
All right, that's great. And when you go into the breakout rooms, we're just going to move you automatically. So if you have, there are other people with you that are observing you in a group, all of you will go into that breakout room on the screen. And we'll walk you through as we are going. So let's begin, because we'll pick this up. We're not going to do the breakout right away. I want to first open this with a super huge thank you to Gail. You see Gail Cormier on the screen here at the very top. Gail, wave to everybody. Gail is serving as the host for this session from the Federation of Families, and will keep us connected and work with us for any technical issues. And now Jane and I would like to introduce ourselves. It is such a privilege to be here with you. My name is Ellen Kagen, and I sometimes introduce myself in spaces like this as one of the founders of the System of Care movement. Yes, I was 12. That is actually not true, but it was a long time ago. And working in this field from the very, very beginnings of my own leadership journey led me to found the Leadership Academy through the Georgetown University Center, National Technical Assistance Center on Children's Mental Health, which I led for 23 years and have been working with leaders, both family, system, and young adults for in my entire career. I consider myself a partner and an ally and a huge champion for Family Voice in the development and services and supports to help make our community stronger. Jane?
Hi, everybody. I am Jane Walker, and I'm a mother of 5 children, grandmother of 5 children, and a social worker by training. I came to this work in the family movement over 30 years ago because of a daughter of ours who has very complex mental health needs along with developmental disability, still very much in a caregiver role. Trust me on that. But I have to tell you, it is particularly meaningful for me to be with you today because I was one of the 16 family members that gathered in a room in Washington, D.C. over 30 years ago to start the Federation of Families, and was at the first Federation of Families conference with Ellen and 49 other people. That was the total sum of the conference. And we were thrilled that we got that many people in the room together. And looking at this, we have over 80 people just on this session. So it is really, really meaningful for me to be with you today. And always a joy to work with Ellen on building leadership, and particularly my passion on building family leadership.
So we welcome you to this session, and we kind of want to give you a sense of what it is that we are really excited to explore with you. And that is this idea about leading change. Like, if I were to put any 2 words together about what the people in this room desire most, it's that the systems that our children and we interface with are actually not serving us in the best ways that they can, and need us and others to actually design and lead change. But leadership is a really misunderstood field. We're going to explore that in this hour and a half. But first, we want to do a little bit of identification of what your challenges are, and have you have an opportunity to rest what Jane and I are going to be sharing with you on something real that's happening today in your life related to your role in leading change. And then we would like to also talk about what it means to be in advocacy, and then explore what is leadership and what's the difference between leadership and authority, and how is it different from management and other things that we do. The first part of our session is to really make sure we're clear that of all the things that we do and do well and care about, they're actually different from each other as functions in leading change. And we want to be very clear about what those distinctions are, that they're all important, but they are different tools, and we need both in our systems work. Towards the last half of our session, we have a case study, and we're going to ask you to explore which of these functions, advocacy and or leadership, would be the most effective in helping to lead change in this particular case. And then at the very end, we're going to actually have an opportunity to apply the lessons learned that we're sharing to the work that we have. So setting the expectation, we are not here to teach advocacy. We actually believe many of you in this room are far better teachers of advocacy because you practice it every single day. So we're not really teaching advocacy, but we really are here to expand your identity. If you identify as a family advocate, to expand your identity into the leadership domain and really have some clarity around the tools and the presence around leadership around systems tables, and how we can leverage the best of all the skills that you bring. Jane, is there anything more you'd like to add to where we're planning to go in this hour and a half?
Yeah, I think we really want to, building on what you said, Ellen, expand people's role. We all come into this identified as an advocate for our children, and then for many children in our role. And so we're not asking you to leave that role, but to expand your role. And I think also to see the possibilities that come with expanding that role. And that all sounds very cryptic. We're going to explain it a lot more.
All right, but first we're going to ground this in real stuff, right? So we know that the best way to learn is to actually apply it to a real challenge you're facing right now. So with whatever paper you have available, just grab a note, could be a Post-it note or whatever's in front of you, kind of jot down a challenge that you're having right now. It could be with a system. It could be with a person. It could be within your organization. It could be with your boss. It could be with someone you supervise. It could be with a peer. It could be with in an IEP situation. It could be with the financing situations. Jot down a personal challenge that you are experiencing related to your work. Related to your work in terms of leading systems change, leading change for yourself, for your family, for your children, for your systems, for your organizations. Jot down a challenge, a real challenge, not a fake challenge, a real challenge. I could probably have 50 of them if I really thought about it. Okay, everybody thinking of something. You won't have to share it. This is really just for you. I see lots of people writing. Thank you so much for just jotting it down, just for yourself. Okay. Anybody need more time? If you do, just pop that in the chat. Okay, seeing none. We'll use this as our anchor, and you'll be reflecting on what Jane is going to share next on how it's integrated into your challenge. Okay, just want to make sure, is everybody good with your challenge? Does everybody see each other? It's so nice to see each other. Great.
Oops. Okay. Ellen, am
Yep.
I controlling slides?
Nope, you're
Okay.
good.
Okay. So I mentioned earlier that we all come into this work as advocates for our children, right? And I would wager that then all of us are viewing ourselves as advocates within the system. Raise your hand if you feel that you are an advocate in the system. Yeah, that is often our main identity: family member, advocate, family member / advocate. Could be a youth. I don't mean there may be youth on the call. I don't mean to say that they too are not advocates and self-advocates as well as advocates in the system. So if we look at what advocacy is, what that role is, it is the act of supporting, defending, or arguing. And by when we say arguing, we mean really explaining. We don't mean combative arguing for a cause or an issue on behalf of or in support of another person, a place, or an issue. It can be, as we said, advocating for your child, advocating for another child in an IEP meeting, and then systems advocacy, testifying, writing letters, campaigns, all of that kind of thing. So I would wager that everybody on this call has some familiarity with that role and feels somewhat comfortable in that role. So we're going to talk about moving beyond advocacy and really not leaving that, but adding to that. Let's see. Okay. So if we look at what advocacy involves in this word cloud, the word that you probably see first and foremost is telling. We tell people what we think should happen. We tell them this should be the legislation, this should be the services, this should be what our child needs or what all children in our state need. So we're really telling people. You also see we're persuading people, we're giving them data, we're using our voice to express our point of view, and we're motivating others to join us. Other families, let's write letters, let's make phone calls, let's line up our ducks. So those are the tools for advocacy. And so that's what we're most comfortable doing, right? So let's move on to the next step and look at, I should do this, leadership, and look at how leadership is in many ways overlapping with advocacy, but yet different from advocacy.
Great, thanks, Jane. So leadership is actually a relatively new, let's just call it an evidence-based practice. You couldn't even get a PhD in leadership until almost 2000 in the United States. So people used to actually think about leadership in all kinds of different ways. We had ideas about leadership, but we didn't actually know, like, how do people lead successfully? And so over the last 20 plus years, we've actually begun to define leadership in a way that allows every single person to lead. In the way we want to define leadership is that it's a verb. It's about actions. It's about behaviors. It's about what we choose to do in any given moment. And if you think about the course of a day, there's lots and lots and lots of choices that we are subconsciously and unconsciously making to move the world forward. It's not about positions. It's not about the hierarchy. It is not defined by our role. So people who are executive directors or managers or have positions of, higher positions, they have those positions, but they don't necessarily behave as a leader. And we've seen that in so many ways. And this became really evident, as we started talking about, wait a second, if leadership is a behavior, and if I can choose to do those behaviors, then leadership can come from any chair. Like, I don't have to wait until I'm like the director of something to actually make a difference. I can actually do that from any chair that I'm in. And when we think about leadership, I want to define leadership for us as a process, thinking about leading for the long haul. And that first comes this idea that we're envisioning what the future could look like. And we're working with other people and mobilizing them to join us in a cause that's greater than ourselves, because we know that the status quo is not acceptable. And we are responding to an urgent challenge or an exciting opportunity. So the idea is that we don't do leadership alone. In fact, we can't really do leadership alone. It's a relationship-based activity. It embraces relationships, including people that you don't necessarily like, because you need them. You have to have them. You can't lead without them. Or what?
Or agree with.
Or agree with, right? And we're going to stay close to the people, even those that we don't agree with, because we know that if we're providing leadership, we embrace relationships. It's at the core of everything we do, even those people, as Jane reminds us, that we don't agree with. Leadership also has change as its essential goal. So we don't necessarily need to provide leadership if we're happy with the status quo. We can just sort of accept that and not put in that kind of effort that mobilizes so much energy from other people. And as I mentioned a few minutes ago, it's a behavior that's a choice. Now, I'm going to go even deeper on what some of those behaviors are, because we have to be in awareness at all times as leaders, if we choose leadership, that in any given moment, we can strengthen a relationship and build trust. We can choose to do that, even with the people that we don't agree with. We can bring clarity to a conversation that might be going in circles. We might be able to ask a really good question that gets people thinking about new ways of doing things. Notice none of this is telling. Strengthening relationships and trust, bringing clarity, asking a good question. Because in that very same moment, we could choose another path. We could show our frustrations. We could shut someone down. We could blame other people for why things aren't happening, or we might choose to not even show up, right? So our individual choices about how we show up, what we do in those moments is super disciplined. It's really intentional and thoughtful in all that we do. And we sometimes call it acting leaderly, which is a very disciplined way of saying, I'm choosing to build a relationship and trust. I'm choosing to ask a good question. I'm quieting my own need to tell others what to do, which is very human, and quieting that so that I can be more leaderly. And it can apply to all aspects of our life, not only the systems table that I'm envisioning at the moment, but it can apply to everything that we do with our families, in the civic life we lead, in the small organizations we're in. It is a very personal journey. What's easy for me to do could be very hard for you to do. What's hard for me to do could be very easy for you to do. And all of us have to make those decisions about whether or not to step into this kind of leadership development. Now, I'm beginning to sort of share with you that leadership is this process, this behavior, this awareness. And if we are being leaderly, very often our social influence will increase, meaning those relationships that we build, the trust we engender, will increase our capacity to influence other people and create the change that we want, because we'll be working together with all people. We'll be learning together, meaning even though I have a desire of what I want, I understand that there are legitimate competing perspectives in my space, and I need to understand them as much as I need to tell other people what to do. Now, want to compare that to something that we call formal authority. And this was a big mental model shift that came out of adaptive leadership and Ron Heifetz at Harvard University in the late 90s. So a lot of people, as I mentioned earlier, were thinking that leadership meant I needed to be in a position. And we're now saying, no, you actually don't. You can do all the things that I just described from any position. I mean, Jane and I were just talking. I was probably in my 20s, when I went to the first Families as Allies conference. I didn't have a big title. I wasn't in charge. I didn't stand on the podium and get kudos. I was the behind the scenes person. But I want to tell you, that conference wouldn't have happened without me. Right? Because I was doing my job. I was doing my due with the people, building relationships, moving processes along. I didn't have formal authority. So formal authority is power that's invested in a role that you're given. And it allows you to perform certain acts, like do budgets or hire and fire or supervise or do family peer support. But it comes at distinct moments, like a hiring or an election, or you get a license to do something and you're allowed to practice. And it's really part of organizational hierarchy. But it absolutely does not give that person any capacity to lead unless they make that choice to behave in that kind of way. Now, so Jane, go ahead.
Yeah, could you go back a bit? Yeah, so I know that we have many family members who are in a parent peer support role, or a youth peer support role, or a family navigator or something. You sit at tables with a parent oftentimes, but you also can be at other tables along with your colleagues in the organization, or maybe you sit at tables with, you're sent to attend a meeting or something like that. And so I think Ellen's point is particularly important for us as family or youth to realize that we can lead from any chair, because we don't have to have that formal authority. The leadership comes from within. Leadership comes from within. It's the behavior, a process, a choice. And so you, as a parent peer support provider, and I've talked to many who feel very confined in their role in the organization as a peer support provider, and some would even say they feel diminished in their role, that it is not as respected as they would want it to be. You have the capacity to change that and become a leader in that way. And we'll talk about strategies around that. Ellen, thanks.
Yeah, really, really important. And, you know, to even advance that even further, Jane, so for people who have a role in your organization, like let's say you have formal authority, you're supervising people, you have a job you're doing, and then you find yourself at a system table, you have no authority around that table. Right? No. And so this idea of bringing in leadership around those collaborative tables where you are one of many voices is absolutely critical, because you actually don't have authority to lead on. And that is where we sort of think about this opportunity. And I always think about it as an opportunity, because as we sit around tables where we don't have this formal authority, we actually have the opportunity for informal authority. And we earn that authority. People convey it on us because we are behaving in a way that builds relationships and builds trust and offers something around that table that builds the future. And we're providing clarity where there might be confusion, and giving contributions in a way that people can hear us, and by offering the confidence or the hope that we will really see this, instead of the shrillness of telling people how bad they are, how things aren't working, all true, right? It's not that you're not speaking truth. It's just, what energy do we put out there in order to elevate the conversation and allow others around the table to convey that informal authority on us. And when we get that, these next two slides are just, you know, details about how we get authority. This is the formal, and here's the informal. It exists outside of the position, that upper right-hand box. So even if we're the director of our family organization, which is a lot of authority, right? You have authority and responsibility over a budget and a staff, etc. You know, you go around the collaborative table and your role shifts. And therefore, when it shifts, what we need is leadership. And so one of the things we often think about is, what is it that family leaders really have at our disposal to bring to the table, to the leadership conversation? And Jane, let's share this, and I'm sure people can also add additional ones in the chat as well.
Right. So in many ways, I have always felt that family leaders, youth leaders, really have an advantage in terms of not having a title, formal authority, because we really bring to the table in our informal authority much more than they could ever bring in their, if you will, formal way. And what is that? What is it? Of course, it's our lived experience. That's our major qualifier, but certainly not the only one. Our passion drives us, whether it's for our children or for all children. We have a unique opportunity also in that we have many roles. We are, as we said at the outset, advocates, but many of us also become providers, trainers, and at the same time, and here is one of the biggest factors, how many times are you working with a system that you end up also being a recipient of services from? Certainly if your child's in education and you may be in an IEP table for another child, or maybe working with the school system around mental health in schools, and we hope you are. And yet, on Friday, you may be there for your own child. So we see the system from many different vantage points. That's a huge asset in terms of being and coming to the table without any formal authority or title. So our relationship with the system is often multiple perspectives. We are unauthorized leaders. I often love that, because what do authorized leaders have to deal with? They are encumbered by their mandates from their organization, by regulation, by legislation. They are very, very constrained. And often you see that constraint manifests itself in status quo, as Ellen mentioned earlier. So we can be using our lived experience, our multiple relationships with the system and vantage points to be bringing in, opening windows, if you will, a viewpoint of the system that could be very much missing and very much needed. With that, we are also doing a juggling act, and you cannot understate the fact that we are often doing all of this while we're trying to juggle our personal family and home life, sometimes crisis and all those things. But again, that puts us in a very different relationship with the system. So with all those qualities, and if you have others that you think of, please put them in the chat box. The point to underscore here is that these qualities require self-awareness. And it's the self-awareness that really kind of governs how you show up at a meeting, how you, can't say it often enough, how you behave, how you express yourself, and how you build relationships. It is, again, differentiating from advocacy, where we're coming in with a viewpoint, as opposed to leadership, where we're really building relationships on the long haul, trying to affect change. So let's see. Rachel has added self-awareness, confidence, hope, resiliency. Any others on here? Okay. Anybody has any other? We would love to add them to this.
Yeah.
It's important. So, okay.
Okay, so now we're going to ask you to actually really give this a good thought, right? So Jane and I have just sort of made a distinction between formal authority and informal authority, leading with authority and leading without authority. And for most of us, we are leading without authority. I mean, at some way, we're around a lot of team and collaborative spaces where we are not in charge. Because if we were in charge, it would be really different, but we're not in charge. So we've got to work with other people and show up in a way that's effective. So in the chat, we would love for you to now teach the rest of us. How do you, in those collaborative moments when you are really your best self, right? And you probably know now when you're not your best self. I certainly do. And it's when I'm not my best self, I'm not as effective. What have you done? How do you gain informal authority? What do you be? How do you be? And what do you do? And so we'll all watch the chat.
Yep.
And see what those might be.
So Bonnie says our lived experience and being confident to share our personal journey.
Good. What do you do?
Yeah.
To gain informal authority? Ask why.
Ooh, ask why. Good one, Cynthia. Yep. Live through the experience with the family. So join
Nice.
with the family. Thank you, Nikki. That's great.
Nice. Oh, Sue just said ask questions. Beautiful. Open-ended questions. Provide alternative
Wow, it's going
perspectives.
pretty
Be
fast.
persistent. Listen more than you speak. All right, we're going to really come back to that one in just a second.
Yeah.
Yep.
For alternative perspectives, be persistent.
Respectfully challenge those in charge using my lived experience. Restate what you heard them say. Good. A lot of restating, reflecting, clarifying. Beautiful. Yep. In many cases, we know more. So we're making offerings about things that we're aware of that others might not be. Right? Asking what they need and not what you think they need. Beautiful. Lead by example, Michelle. Beautiful. Try our best. Speak about our policy change rather than personal agenda. Beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah, this is, I hope we save this chat. We'll come up with a tip sheet on how to gain informal authority.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to add one that I think is the foundational piece, and that's trust. Because I think if, be it a family, individual family member, be it a colleague, be it a system, if people do not trust you, then I think you're not going to have that relationship or the informal authority as a leader. That people need to trust that you will always be respectful, that you will always not speak disparagingly outside of meetings about them or the agency or whatever. People really need to trust who you are as an individual. Be a learner. Meet the person where they are. Gain trust. Yep. Thanks, Vanessa. Building rapport takes time. Yes, for trust. Yep. All is true. Very good. Trust is huge. Thanks, Nelson. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think you can do many, many things, but unless you've got the trust, I don't think it works. Yeah. Reliability takes time to build trust. It was rare find in the beginning of her journey. Wow. Yeah, Carla, very good. Rapport with those in authority. That's exactly the relationship building. Absolutely. Do what you say. Great, great.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would like to just also share, Jane, I wasn't really expecting to say this, but having watched you as a family leader all of my professional career, Jane understood this at such a deep level because when she entered into an opportunity to lead in the state of Maryland, the state doesn't always see the perspectives of the ground level. And although I don't think anyone wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to do something to create chaos. So the intent might be good, but the outcomes aren't always what we wish. But Jane really understood that it didn't help to be an adversary of the state, and found her partner in the state children's mental health director at the time, who through many conversations, and it didn't start off with one conversation. You are really in this for the long haul. And Jane was such an exemplifier of that, so that by the time real huge policy change opportunities came forward, she and the state children's mental health director were partners, and they saw each other as resources. And the other thing, Jane, if I could just say, I mean, I know you didn't expect me to say this, but one of the other things that I want to offer to the people in this room that I've watched over 30 years in this field is how important it is to have humility. Because quite honestly, as human beings, we only see what we see. Our experience, as powerful as it is our experience. And the way we build trust is not that other people can see our experiences, but that we really understand the experiences of others. And to do that, you have to ask, like you've all said, the right questions. The state children's mental health directors, they're in agony every day, because they're as boxed in. But unless we ask questions and share our humility and empathy with them, we wouldn't even know that. So think about your partners, if I can be a spokesperson for the partners just for a moment, who need you to be their partners. Because for many of them, there is wanting leadership as much as we are. So thank you, Jane, for being that example for us. And I want to add humility to the box. And I want to also add to the box, to the chat, understanding that we're in this for the long haul. You don't just gain informal authority like this. It takes time and effort and real focus.
And, your example of working in partnership with the children's director in Maryland, I would not always agree, but I never blindsided. I would pick up the phone and call and say, we don't agree on this. And this is where we're going with it. We're writing to the governor, so that's the advocacy role, but the leadership role really preceded that, the relationship building. And so he knew, he wasn't blindsided, and therefore he trusted me. And that's how we had that built that relationship. And as Ellen says, over time is really what you're looking at the long haul with that, because people change, administrations change. So your relationship you have at the moment may not be there a year from now. So you have sometimes start all over again. Okay, I'm looking at the time. Okay,
so we'll just quickly bounce through because I want to get to your slide on the distinction. So you've all put it out there. Gaining informal authority means you're practicing leadership, and as Jane said on the advocacy side, the word that jumped out was telling, and you all said this so beautifully in the chat, that we lower our own voices to understand others and to really listen. And when we want to listen more, questions are our tool. Inquiry is our tool. Clarifying and reflecting is our tool to make sure that they have an opportunity to speak and we can actually deeply understand their perspective. And we will model what we want for others to do. We will be the leaders. This field will be the leaders. Family leaders will be the leaders for the entire field. So you can lead from influence or from position. And we've kind of really shared with you that leadership is not, it's also not managing, but we want to make this distinction about leadership and advocacy because it is so central to the identity of so many family leaders. And many of you shared that you see this as a very important role for you in your everyday work. So there are distinctions. We want you to be aware of them so that you can make the choice as to which one will serve you better in the role that you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
So Jane.
Ellen, I can't move the slides.
No, that's okay. You should see the slide that says leadership and advocacy, the 2 circle slides.
I'm not.
Okay. What slide are you seeing?
I'm still on how do you gain informal authority?
Okay. Let's see if, in fact, there's something, if this is happening for everyone. So let me just ask out in the field out here.
Ellen, this is
yeah.
Gail. What you need to do is take your cursor if you're running the slides and click on the slides so you can reconnect it. And then you will be able to advance after that.
Okay. Click on the slide.
Click on the slide and then go back to the way you were advancing.
Is it moving?
No, it isn't.
Oh. I was gonna say, Gail, you sound like you got experience.
I'm getting really good at this, Tika, dear. Ellen, what we can do then is stop the slides and then restart and advance them. That's probably what you're gonna have to do.
Okay.
And Jane,
Yeah.
Kelly McNabb is here, and if you tell Kelly how many breakout groups, you could talk to her privately in chat and let her know how many breakout groups. You'll be all set. She'll help you with that.
Oh, Ellen, had you set up the breakout groups?
It just didn't allow me to show who should go into what room. So let me just stop this. Sorry. Does everyone see my screen?
No, I think you may have frozen.
We're still seeing the how do you gain informal?
Huh. Okay.
Okay, well, I'm going to call on Kelly. Kelly, can you put your mic on and kind of help us talk us through this?
I'm here. Ellen, you said you already have created the breakout rooms.
I have.
So you could choose assign automatically and it'll just put people in them kind of evenly.
We had slides before that.
I'm sorry.
Okay, tell me what you see.
Blank.
Yeah, just take gray screen.
Stop share. Oh yeah, it must be me. Jane, you have the slides too. Do you want to pull them up? It must be my internet, which is unusual.
How many breakout rooms do you need created?
We have about 80 people. We want to put about 4 people in a room.
So about 20 breakout rooms?
Or maybe 4 or 5. Put 5. That'd be fine too.
5 breakout rooms? Oh, all right. Great. Okay. So, and is there anyone in particular that needs to be in each of those 5 rooms?
Nope, very random.
Okay. Do you want me to go ahead and open them up?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Just, Kelly, tell me what you see on the screen.
I see your PowerPoint tools of leadership
Great.
with your slides to the left.
Great. Jane, I think that's yours, right?
It is. Yeah.
It is. Okay, great.
Okay. All right. Are people seeing another word cloud here?
Yep.
Okay. So this is tools of leadership to kind of compare and contrast with advocacy. So if you recall, the kind of the big word in the cloud was what? Telling. In contrast, the tools of leadership are really all about listening. There's a lot of overlap that we'll see in the next slide, but if you look at the words in here, it's relationships, motivating others, listening, using feedback, and kind of the flip side of advocacy. It still is doing the same thing in terms of working for good, working for change, motivating others, but it's coming at it from a different angle. A different framework is actually what we refer to. So, oh, Ellen, I think these were hidden, but somehow they're coming up there. So this is what we mean when we're talking about advocacy and leadership as distinct but overlapping. So if you look at in the middle, the overlap in black, both advocacy and leadership are calling attention to issues, or be it they individual issues or system issues. Both are working for change. They really want to make things better for all involved. And both mobilize others. They motivate others to get involved for change. But if you look at the green circle with advocacy, remember, it has a particular point of view. You want to get something across, whether it's the services, the budget, the eligibility, you've got a point of view that is the point of view you think is the best, the right, the most straightforward, and that's the one you are telling others and trying to get them to listen using your personal story, using data, using research, but you're using all of that to really convince people to see it your way. You're persuading people, and you're certain this is the way to go. This is the right thing to do. If you look on the blue circle under leadership, it's asking questions, inquiry, to understand the perspective of others. What are they thinking about this? It's building and nurturing those relationships over the long term. It's listening, it's using the feedback, and it's also motivating others. But you are vulnerable. You are not coming in with the answer. Now, that's not to say you might not have a point of view in a leadership role that you would like to see happen, but you're not closed to other perspectives at the same time. And you're really trying to get everybody on board to really look at the issue from multiple vantage points. And you are open to that, as opposed to the advocacy where you're really coming in with, this is the way it should be. So when I worked in Maryland, we became aware that the data around children in special education who were coded, and forgive the term, ED, was very much declining all over. However, there were certain jurisdictions where there were more than would be expected identified as ED, and other jurisdictions where there were no children identified, completely absent. We also were, data showed that there was big disparity racially, in addition to geographically. So we had choices here, and we could have gone in as a family organization to the Department of Special Ed and look what you've got here. And this is what you need to do. You need to make sure that every jurisdiction, does it the same way, and every jurisdiction. We could have gone in or threatened a lawsuit. We could have done all those things. What we chose, and it was a conscious decision, instead, was to meet with them, this was their data, it wasn't even our data, and say, this is the data. We have concerns about this. What do you think? And they looked at the data. I have to say, I don't think they had been very aware of all the discrepancies. So we were able to build a relationship because we didn't come in, threatening. We didn't come in, you've got to do it our way. We opened the windows. We opened the windows and we listened to their point of view. It resulted in a 2-year-long process where the Department of Special Education took a look at the data, held multiple forums to raise awareness of the issue. The Association of School Psychologists was given a contract to convene and develop guidelines around identification to ensure there was consistency and training statewide on the issue. So we chose a very different route to accomplish the same thing of calling attention and working for change and mobilizing others. So those are kind of contrasting examples. And let's see. All right. Ellen, I think I'm out of sync here. Am I?
So I see the group discussion questions.
Yes. So do we want to, now we go to the breakouts?
We probably want to do just to put into chat for a second, just to see if people are seeing the similarities and the differences.
Okay.
I
can't
and in a
see the
minute.
chat.
So just asking folks, as Jane has outlined this, what are you noticing as the difference between being in advocacy or in leadership? And additional things that you're noticing. And now that you see this difference, is anything coming up for you as a person desiring change? And my chat is kind of, I don't know, my internet is not doing so well, so I'm actually not seeing the chat. Gail, can you see the chat?
I can see the chat, and I'm not seeing anyone speaking yet.
Yeah. So we want to
anyone have
really
any comments?
Yeah, we would love to for people to put comments in the chat, because for some of you, this may be the first time you've ever really thought about advocacy and leadership being different. For some of you, this could be something you have thought about or heard about in prior, and you've been being like this all the time. What's coming up for you?
I see
So
Kyle. Oh, sorry.
Carla is saying setting emotions to the side and finding purpose to be part of the solution, not just complaining about the problem. And let's see, Wayne. Oh, I missed what Wayne said. Leadership is getting your organization or self on the team for change. Yeah, I like that, team for change. That's great. Setting emotions aside.
Wayne also says more speaking for advocacy, leadership, more listening. I love that.
Yep. Rachel, we're change agents. Listening to all sides, even those you don't agree with. Amen. Yes. Leadership and advocacy both need buy-in for success.
Right. I think, can I add to that? Leadership is actually the behavior that creates shared vision, right? So nobody's really buying into one thing or another. You're really co-creating the future together. And you do this over time, right? So let's think of it as more aligned perspectives, shared vision, common ground, getting to yes, versus you see it my way or I see it your way. Like no polling. We're just working in sync together, even with people we don't agree with.
Mhm. And I think, Ellen, there's another aspect to this, is we can't go into this expecting the room, the colleagues, the people are going to be there yet.
Yes.
It's where we are in that room. It's where we are in that room. So the success is viewed in terms of our success and how we manage ourselves in the room and how we use our leadership to bring others along. But to go into the room expecting everybody to be sharing that viewpoint or at that place doesn't happen. Listen to learn instead of listening to dispute. Augustine, thank you.
There's the coach approach, Augustine. I love it.
Yeah. The world is changed by example, not by opinion. Okay, somebody is looking up quotes here. This is very good, very good. Try something different, think outside the building, not the box. Rachel, wow, I like that one too. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Advocacy is protecting rights and let their voices be heard. Leadership, influencing others and leading a team to see the vision.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I loved what someone said at the very front of this. This is an emotional journey.
For sure.
I think family leaders come with the personal emotions of the journey that you've been on. And the biggest question, we get nicked and triggered all the time by those around us, and our ability to manage our own emotions. I have been the least effective in all my career, in all my interactions with system leaders, family partners, is when I've lost my emotions. Least effective. It might have felt right for me at the moment. So be thinking about that in your leadership journey. So now let's go to the breakouts, because now we see the difference, and now we're going to give you a case. Gail had put it into the chat as a downloadable, and we want to put you into breakouts so that you have the opportunity to review a case, a real live situation, and be thinking about, especially looking back on those two intersecting circles of what is advocacy and what's in the leadership box and what's intersecting. What approach, this is our question, what approach would you take? And I want to sort of maybe, Jane, if since you have sharing capability, if we want to just put up the case study so we can just read it out loud really quickly and let people go into breakouts. I want to thank Kelly. We're going to put you into groups of 4 and 5. And we'll be about 10 minutes in the breakouts and then come back 8 to 10 minutes. Kelly, does that work?
Yeah, that's fine. You said 4 to 5 groups, or?
Yeah, 4 to 5 people in a group.
Oh,
So I think, 4 to 5 people in a group, maybe 5 or 6. I don't know. There are 95 people. So I don't know how much access you have to rooms, but a small enough group so that everyone can speak. So this is the case. And again, it's in the chat for you to download. As a family leader, you are aware that when youth turn 18 years of age, they automatically transition to the adult service system in your state. As a result, many youth lose their services or drop out of service. The state is applying for a new federal grant to serve youth transitioning to adulthood. You are convinced that the grant should fall under the child and adolescent division of your state instead of the adult division. You are at the table when this issue is being discussed. You decide you must speak up. Okay, so these are the questions that you'll be asked to think about. What might you say or do in an advocacy role? What might you say or do in a leadership role? How are these approaches different? What short-term or long-term benefits might come from your decision or approach? And could you do both, either or? How are you thinking about this? Okay, that's what we want you to be pondering. You are the family leader around this collaborative table when this conversation is happening.
So Ellen, it's 2:54, and people will have what, 10 minutes?
Yeah, and then we'll come back.
Okay. All right, we'll see you back in 10 minutes. Have fun with it.
All right. Oh. I went to close the rooms and now they have 60 seconds. So
Okay.
next time I'll know. Hit close rooms at 1 minute.
Hi, Augustine. Nice to see you.
Hey, Augustine.
Hey, Ellen. Hi, Jane. Jane, it's always a pleasure to see your face, sweetie. Always. I miss you sometimes.
Oh, gosh, yes.
Mhm.
But that was great that Jane won the award last week.
Yes, yes, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
Mhm. Wonderful.
Welcome
She
back,
works very
everybody.
hard. I'll be quiet. I'm gonna go back on mute.
So good to see everybody. Everybody's faces.
I know. I'm wishing we could meet in the lobby. Yeah. And catch up or get to know each other. Yeah.
That would
Next
be awesome.
year.
Next year.
Oklahoma City, is that the place?
Love it.
That should be awesome. I hear they have good food.
Well, Jane, in Oklahoma, it's you and me. We have to have dinner.
Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh.
Plenty of
Yeah.
cabin.
All right, we're still waiting for a couple of the breakout rooms to come back. And as soon as we do, we'll get started again. Thank you so much for being such great teachers in this room. Kelly, can you see how many more breakout rooms we have coming back?
It looks like folks should be back.
Yeah,
Breakout rooms should all close.
Okay.
All right, Jane, go ahead.
All right, let's get started. So in the chat box, could you share with us any differences you saw in these approaches? Which one you thought might be more effective and why? And really how you would use yourself differently, depending upon your approach. And then is there one more comfortable than the other for you? What's your, what would be your most comfortable, and then what would be the one that would perhaps challenge you more? So let's see what's in the chat here. First of all, apologies. We know that some of the rooms had technical challenges. And boy, isn't that the name of the game nowadays? It's everybody's at challenges. So thanks for your patience and joining us again. So Bonnie says advocacy is more based on experience, leadership more analytical. And I would use a combination of both. That's very interesting thought, Bonnie. Love to know more about your concept of analytical. Because one of the things we also should have said is that nothing in the definition of leadership or anything in leadership suggests that you have all the answers or the right answer. Leadership is about getting there, the process. So in this case, I would work, let's see, Bree. In this case, both would work. As an advocate, I would work to amplify the voice and choice of my story or the story of the family I might be working with. I would use that to bring home the message of, in this case, why those services would fall under the umbrella of youth care. Okay, any other thoughts on this? So I'm going to tell you how this story ended, because it is a real story that occurred in the family organization I was leading at the time. And we went in convinced that we were right, that this new grant belonged under the child service system. But we stepped back for a minute and said, you know what, we really need to hear more. And we did that through multiple channels. We first and foremost met with families, and we met with youth, and we met with providers. And we realized we were wrong. We were wrong. But not only were we wrong, that it should be under the child serving system, we came to the realization that it shouldn't be under the adult service system either, that this age group had very unique needs. And we actually changed our whole strategy. And when we came to tables, we would bring the information about what we learned and the unique milestones, the unique characteristics of this age group, and why the services under the child system and the adult system, neither were really appropriate. There needed to be a tailored program for that particular age group. Had we not kind of stepped back and looked at, wait a minute, you know, our windows are closed and we need to open the windows, we would have pursued that one perspective without stepping back to look at the big picture, to listen to others, to get others on board, and to bring that back and put it all on the table. So I think that's an example of how, in the long run, you can use leadership to expand your role, move beyond just an advocate with a singular point of view to becoming a leader. And I think that the system looked to us then as a result of that, saw us as a leader in the field. So that is an example of how we kind of learned the hard way, how we needed to not rely so heavily on advocacy and really use more leadership. So
Jane, it's so extraordinary. I really want to sort of like offer this to the room. It is the rare leader who can admit that what they thought was right has changed. And the reason it changes is because we learn something new. We see something different. And the only way that happens is if the people in the room are learners and listeners and clarifiers, because otherwise we are blinded by what we think is right. They are blinded by what they think is right. And that what you end up having is this I'm right, I'm right, I'm right, I'm right kind of conversation where nobody's listening to each other.
Right.
So Jane's story, which is a real story, really happened, exemplifies the need for us as leaders to hold our rightness, whatever we think is right, just hold it lightly enough so that we can hear the other perspectives and perhaps we say the same. That may happen.
Right. Yep, could have.
And perhaps we are the ones that shift and move as well. So it's such a beautiful story and a lesson for all of us to hold our rightness lightly.
Okay, Ellen.
So in thinking about all of this and in the remaining minutes that we have, maybe minute, literally minute, we've put out for you a lot of thoughts and that these are two very distinct roles that we play. Sometimes advocacy is exactly what it's called for, but very often it's leadership. And we want to encourage all of us that have come into this field as advocates with that identity to expand and lean into the leadership role, and would love to see you put into the chat your ahas, your reflections on what you are taking away from this conversation for yourself. We'll read them as they come out. Jane, can you see them? As the chat comes out, to please put your ahas in the chat.
Vulnerability from Wayne.
Yeah, nice.
Oh, not from Nichelle. Great lesson. Humility shows a willingness to listen, learn, then lead. Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah, Wayne. Let's see. Difference between leadership and advocacy. Thank
Great.
you, Bonnie. Anybody have any, like, you know what? Next time I go to a meeting, I'm going to try this, or I'm going to think about my role in a different way when I'm at those meetings. A, I can lead from any chair. I don't need to have a title. I don't need to have formal authority. B, I can be the one to put questions on the table that open the window and get fresh ideas, fresh air, and get people talking to each other to build those relationships. Think about how this really will affect you in the next week, in the next month, in the next year, in terms of the issues you're working on, but really in terms of your, as Ellen said at the beginning, it's not just your work, it's every aspect of your life, really. Leadership isn't confined to your work. And I would ask you to think about something else. Throughout this, we've used the term family leader. I'm going to challenge you to drop the family. Not that you're not still a family, but you are a leader. You don't need a qualifier that says family leader. You're a leader. You are a leader, and will bring people together and create change by listening and controlling your own emotions and your own behavior at the table. I'll think twice about these words moving forward. Very good. Myra, everybody's word is important. Input, excuse me. Building relationships. Keeping current on bills in the house. Yep. In DC as well as in your state, yes. So.
Thank you for that reminder as a Washingtonian.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Ellen, I have no idea what time it is.
Yeah, so have come to the end of our session. Jane, I don't know if you want to put up that very last slide. People have asked for the slides. We will upload them in the Whova system. But the real takeaway here is as leaders, we're going to learn how to dance. We're going to learn how to dance between leadership and advocacy, and we're going to leverage the best of both and really be attuned to when we need to use them so that we are our most effective and we obtain what we need for the communities, the families, the children that we so desperately need to serve. So thank you so much for your time, for your attention, for your teaching, and for your learning.
Sharing. Yes, and sharing. Have a good rest of the conference.